Okay, very good. All right, good evening. Welcome you to the City of Walker Planning Commission meeting, April 21. This is both an in-person and Zoom meeting. So we do have commissioners that are going to be participating remotely this evening. And so we'll be taking comments both in the room here as well as any that might come in via computer or phone. First item on the agenda, or the next item is general public comment. If you're here this evening and wish to speak to a non-agenda item, the agenda item tonight is concerning the project on Cummings. So if you have something that's a non-agenda item, this is an opportunity to come forward and state your name and address and share your concern. Anybody here that would like to do that? Okay. No one in the remote audience. So we'll move to the agenda item. It's case number 21-008. It's a site plan review. 319 Cummings Avenue Northwest for about a 2,800 square foot building for a salon. And I guess with that introduction, turn to Planning Director Tricia Anderson to introduce the project.
Thanks, Terry. As Terry mentioned, we have a site plan review before you tonight at the future address of 319 Cummings Avenue. The parent parcel address is 349 Cummings, but there's a proposed split from that parent parcel, and the proposed lot size will be 13,597 square feet. Zoning district is Standale Downtown District. The future land use designation is Urban Corridor. And the general location of the project site is on the west side of Cummings Avenue, just south of the Cummings Lake Michigan Drive intersection. And with us tonight, we have Steve Witte of Nederveld and Associates on behalf of the Salon owner, Amy Jones. So just to give you a little bit of a background on this project, in 2018, the parcel that you see here outlined in blue was rezoned from SA to SDD, Standale Downtown District. And originally this was a two-phase project, with the first phase being the townhomes that you see there in the picture. And these townhomes are condominiums, so they're owner occupied units, or at least I think they are still at this point. And the second phase was supposed to be on this side of the pink line that you see there. And originally the plan was to construct a live work unit there, to have a little bit of a mixed use area. But things change over time, and that plan wasn't panning out as well, I think, as the proposed project. And so there's a new plan for phase 2, which would be the Benji Salon. So what the owner would do is split that lot off, and it would become an outlot, and it would be under the same ownership of the salon owner. Just to give you a better feel for where this area is, it's right on Cummings. Many of you probably know where DeHop's Brewing is, and then there's a building right here called Natural Elements. The Westtown Apartments are further to the west. This is facing east. You've got the car wash here, Advanced Auto Parts, Taco Bell right here, and then you've got Pennzoil Quick Lube on the corner. So I'm just going to go through a few of the highlights from my staff report. This is a pretty straightforward request, but it is in the Standale Downtown District, so there's some different standards that aren't always applied to your general commercial zone districts. So first I want to talk a little bit about the proposed land uses. So the Standale Downtown District allows for personal service establishments such as salons, and professional massage and nail studios, nail salons, things like that, hair, barber shops. And so this particular salon is proposing hair services. And so various, Amy could probably speak to this a lot better. Various things that you can have done to your hair, typical for salons, eyebrow waxing. There are rooms for massage and there's an associated locker room. And there is an area for nails for both manicures and pedicures, and there's shampoo stations. And there's also a room that is supposed to offer Botox. So one thing that we want to get ironed out right away with this site, and we've talked about this with the applicant, is that the use of massage, you have to take a careful look at that definition in section 94-377 in the regulated uses article. So a massage establishment as defined in that section means any establishment having a fixed place of business where massages are administered for pay, including but not limited to massage parlors, health clubs, sauna, baths, and steam baths. This definition shall not be construed to include a hospital, a nursing home, medical clinic, or the office of a physician, surgeon, chiropractor, osteopath, or physical therapist duly licensed by the state. And then I've highlighted this in my staff report, this second part to that, barber shops or beauty salons in which massages are administered only to the scalp, face, neck, shoulders. So the full body massage is under the regulated uses. So it falls under that adult type full body massage. And so we will need to have a revision in the floor plan that does not show the full beds for the massage. So I've added that as a condition of approval. So what we just mentioned, uses that are permitted in the Sandale Downtown District by right is massage of the upper extremities, above the shoulders, I should say. And so another land use that's being proposed at this salon is brow waxing. And so that use is totally permitted. It's pretty customary for salons to offer brow waxing. But the way our ordinance is written, we want to make sure that we're clear in that we're not allowing brow blading, because that's also a regulated use, because it falls under the definition of tattooing. So what we will need to have the applicant do is revise the site plan to include the specific uses that will be permitted on the site in conjunction with this site plan approval. So I've got that added as a condition of approval. Another item that is a little bit different on this site is the access and parking. So as you know, in the Standale Downtown District, the purpose is to facilitate development of a traditional pedestrian-centered downtown. And some of the standards, like parking location, are different than your typical commercial development. And so what the challenge that they've got on this site is that out front, which is this area here, there are some overhead wires that would pose a challenge in placing a building within that close proximity to those overhead wires. And so instead, the applicant is proposing to sort of flip-flop the parking area and the building. And so the parking is proposed in front instead of behind the building. So what's required is behind buildings for more than one row of angled parking. What's proposed is between the building and the front sidewalk in the front of the building. And so again, the rationale for that is because of the overhead wires. And obviously that's gonna affect another thing that's specific to the Standell Downtown District, which is the building setback. So the building setback is proposed at 75.3 feet between the building and the property line, where the ordinance requires 20 feet between the curb line and the building. And again, this is because of the swap of the parking with the building. And so if the planning commission finds that, that the applicant is demonstrating consistency with the objectives and the intent of the district, they can authorize deviations from those standards. So another area that is occurring on this site is we've got some shared parking that's being proposed. So the spaces that are on the southern end of the natural elements site, these are proposed to be shared spaces. And the applicant is also proposing to remove some existing spaces to allow for an access drive into their parking lot. And so there's also some shared parking proposed over here on the condominium townhome parcel. So in order for these shared parking arrangements to be approved in conjunction with the site plan approval, written arrangements or agreements need to be submitted to the city so that we can ensure that obviously there'll be enough parking for the uses. And so I've added that as a condition of approval. There's a number of easements and agreements that the applicant will be responsible for providing to the city in a recorded format. Because there's shared access and there's shared parking. And then it's not shown, well, it's not shown in the aerial, but on the site plan, this area right here, on the southern, the northeast corner of the townhome site, they're proposing to place their dumpster there, which is kind of odd to place your dumpster on someone else's property. Right now, they're both under the same ownership, and it's not that weird. But 20 years from now, there could be an issue with a dumpster being right outside of these residential buildings, not being on the same property. So if the planning commission is okay with that dumpster location, I've added the condition that they provide us with an easement agreement to be able to use that area for their dumpster. So just a little bit about landscaping. It's a pretty small site, so there's not a ton of requirements for street trees out front. So the landscaping that was provided is good. However, we have a 15-foot buffer that we need to adhere to because this site borders residentially zoned property. So this is buffer zone B when commercial is abutting the residential. So our focus for this site really is to provide a really good barrier or a buffer between the residential and the commercial uses. So in the rear of the site or on the west side of the site, there was no landscaping proposed there. So it's my recommendation that the planning commission allows the applicant to work with staff to come up with an acceptable landscaping plan prior to the issuance of a building permit. And last thing I'll talk about here is lighting. Because it's in the Standale Downtown District, they get to have these lovely, beautiful street pedestrian scale light posts. And so what I've asked the applicant to do, since the light posts were not shown on the plan, is to revise the plan to reflect this type of light post. And we will also need some light fixture specifications for any lighting that's going to be on the back of the building. Because we received some photometric plans, but it only provided foot candle information for two sides of the building. So we need to see how the lighting is going to be spread out through the whole entire site. The only other things I have are that the sidewalk is proposed at 5 feet out front, and the SDD district requires 8 feet. And I'm not gonna read through all my conditions of approval, just to save time here. But you all have my conditions. They're listed in the motion, and we can go through those at that time. But it is my recommendation that the planning commission approve the site plans subject to those 10 conditions indicated in my staff report.
All right, thank you, Tricia. At this point, any comments or questions for for Tricia? Okay. Well, we'll move along now to City Engineer Scott Connors.
Pretty straightforward site plan review items from me. We want to see the existing sidewalk that was recently built just south of the site at the southeast corner of the site. Make sure that the grading is going to work with that. This is a little bit of a unique site because it's got this rear egress stair system. And I'm not sure if that's kind of an accessory or if it's a requirement, but we would certainly recommend that there be a landing at the bottom to receive that area in case that becomes used on a little bit more regular basis. If it's not just for emergency fire egress. There's a proposed access easement on the north part of the site. We want to make sure that's recorded and a copy provided to the city before any building permits, just so that doesn't get away from us. The reason for the flop of the site is partially due to the consumer's energy easement along the north or the east side. And we've had some trouble in the past with streetlights on private sites being put into those easements. In fact, consumers called us out on one rainy day that I'll never forget, in 45 or 30 degree weather, and we had to stand there for an hour and talk about why we could allow that. And so it's burned into my head now. We know, so we bring it up during site plan review. So I think they need to get that signed off on, and certainly documented in our notes here. There was a fire protection line adjustment with the flop of the building again that has resulted in some changes. In this case, the fire hydrant is a little bit isolated at the southwest corner of the site. So if you think like a fireman, as you drive into the site with a truck, you want to make sure that hydrant is at an accessible place so that you don't have to go cross country to it with, dragging a lot of equipment. So I did send this memo to the fire chief asking for input. We didn't get any input. I don't know if Tricia did, but I think it's a wise idea to say that location is subject to his approval, because if it's not in the right spot and they can't use it, it doesn't do any good. And then lastly, the grading at the southeast corner of the site where they're going to meet with that existing sidewalk. It's going to take a little bit of effort, I think, working with the property owner to the south. There's kind of a ghost contour shown in there. If you look real close at about the 724 elevation. And I think that requires that they grade onto the neighboring property, which means they would either trespass or get approval to do that. But without it, there's a 3 to 6 foot difference, just depending on where you are on that property line. And that would have to be mitigated with grading easements, potentially some storm sewer. And if they couldn't get that approval, probably retaining walls. So I want to make sure that we point that out, that there's a little bit of unresolved grading there. I think they can work it out. If they can't, they just have to adjust the design, because what they've shown here can't be done without one or the other. So that is it for us.
Thank you, Scott. Again, commissioners, any questions or comments for either Tricia or Scott? All right, seeing none. We'll invite the applicant. I believe Mr. Steve Witte will be representing the applicant.
Is that better? Oh, I'm loud now. Normally I'm loud enough without mics. So anyways, again, to repeat, my name is Steve Witte from Nederveld, here tonight representing Benji Salon and Spa. With me in attendance tonight is Amy Jones, who is the owner of the Salon or Spa, as well as Joe Moderman, who is with RJM Properties. They're the current owner and seller of the property. He's also the developer of the townhomes behind this spa. I think Tricia and Scott did a great job giving you an overview of the project, both verbally and in the report. So I'll keep this quite brief. As Tricia had indicated, the initial intent by Joe was to develop the townhomes, which are now constructed, as phase 1. And then the plan from a couple of years ago had shown a mixed use building in front. That, if you remember from a couple of years ago, Joe didn't have all the details worked out with that. So we got approval of the plan as a whole, but then phase 2, which is this front building, would have to come back to the planning commission. Since that time, things have changed somewhat, and Joe is looking to sell this portion of the site to Amy to develop as a spa and a salon. The biggest change layout wise, as Tricia indicated, is we're actually kind of flipping the site a little bit. If you remember from a couple of years ago, we had shown the building closer to Cummings and then the parking behind it. The reality of though is with the consumer's overhead lines in front of the building, that makes it challenging in and of itself. But then the other couple important things to note is that the businesses to the north of us all have their parking in front of the buildings along Cummings. So this is very consistent with the area. And then the other thing I'd like to point out along those lines is this is the southern part of the SDD district. So in other words, as you head south, buildings aren't going to be up close to the road. They're going to be far back. So in light of all those items, we really would appreciate being able to flip the site around to the more traditional layout, so to speak, with the building behind the parking. We feel that the building is a very attractive building. We can go into more details on that if you'd like, but renderings and building plans were submitted for that. As Scott indicated, with us flipping the site around, unfortunately, we do have some utility rework to do. In addition to what Scott had mentioned, we actually, our stormwater detention is actually in the way now of the building. So we're reconfiguring that. We'll work out all those engineering details with Scott pending hopeful site plan approval tonight. One thing that I would like to note is that the fire hydrant, we actually did discuss that with the fire department. They are okay with the location as we're showing it on the plan. And then I also did have correspondence with Larry Olson at the City of Grand Rapids Water Department regarding the fire protection line. And he is also okay with the plans that I'm showing. So again, we'll wrap up those engineering details and designs when we get to the permitting process part of it. Another thing I'd like to comment on, just because it was mentioned, is the dumpster location. Tricia is correct that we're showing it on basically the property that's part of the townhomes, but it's actually behind the Natural Elements building, so it's screened from Cummings. Really, the only alternative that we could think of for that was to put it in the front of the building, which is then right along Cummings and is very visible to everybody. So we have no problems screening that dumpster very well for the townhomes project. And then that way it's, again, not overly visible from Cummings. Easements will be provided along with the shared parking easements and all that fun stuff. So I just wanted to point that out as well. We have obviously gotten all staff's comments. We have no issues or concerns with any of those comments. So we'll, pending approval or hopeful approval tonight, we'll work with staff to make sure all those conditions are met regarding the lighting, landscaping, sidewalk, and then, like I said, all the engineering items. So hopefully that gives you an overview of the site, the project. If you have anything site plan wise or engineering wise, I'd be more than happy to answer those questions. If you have anything, questions on hair and salon stuff, that's not me at all, but Amy is here and she knows all about that stuff. So if you have any questions business wise, she's your person there. So again, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Steve. Again, commissioners, any questions of the applicant?
Yeah, question on the dumpster. So if you're gonna put it on the other piece of property, why didn't you put it behind the new proposed building? Because that's still their property too.
It gets a little tight for access to
I
it.
know that road is really, it's a weird curve into there.
It's a curve into there, and then it's also not a flat site. You're going up an incline there, so it's really tight from an access standpoint. You know, ideally, obviously, most people like the dumpsters as close to their building as possible within reason. So that would make all the sense in the world. It's just there's not room for it. Really, the only, again, I took a close look at it, and really the only main area that the other option that would really work is if you put it in the front somewhere. But then again, it's right out the middle of everything, and we just didn't really like that idea of putting an enclosure. Granted, you know, the enclosure will be nice, but we don't really want that to be the focal point of the site.
They'll have a gate on the front of it too.
Correct, yes.
What about, did you look at, you know, I know the building's in the back and parking's in the front, but could you have done parking in the front building and then parking in the back?
There's not enough space there.
Not enough
I
space,
did
okay.
like, I think 13 different layouts on this, and
I'm
this
sure you
really
did,
is
yeah.
what works best.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks, Pat. Anybody else?
Just looking for
Questions?
feedback at this point. I guess on the flipping of the site with the building being moved to the back and the parking to the front, I think in this location, for my part, I think that's fine. Doing some edge matching with the other frontage of the buildings, the overhead lines, that stuff gets funky. I know it's hard to work around that. So I think that layout is fine. The dumpster stuff doesn't bother me as long as you guys have the recorded easement. I think that for our part, as long as it's recorded with the properties, there's not much else we need to do. I don't, were there any other, I think those were the only two issues that we had kind of hanging out. Everything else, as long as you're good with staff recommendations, I think I'm good on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say if I could jump in, again, I don't understand any of the business side of it, so I assume Amy's okay with everything Tricia has in the report, so, okay, just wanted to make sure, so.
I do have a quick question, Amy. I was wondering about your room for Botox
Yes.
injections.
Yes.
So I obviously do not know a lot about salon services. But I did read that you have to be certified or you have to be like a medical professional.
Correct. Yes. And so I apologize maybe more for the labels than anything. It's probably a future dream of after I get more educated and the right medical professionals on board and whatnot for that licensing. So it's probably
Gotcha.
a future plan.
Okay.
Specifically for that. And then like, yeah, Steve said, so I totally agree. And we've talked about that with the massage usage and the not microblading and all that with the ordinances. So that all is very doable. And yeah, that works for me. So
Okay, great.
And
Thank
what-
you for clarifying.
any other questions for me while I'm up here, I guess?
All set.
All right, thank you.
Now, this is not a public hearing, but we do have visitors in the room, as well as there could be out in the audience offsite. Do you have any questions or comments to offer? Okay. Jason, are you checking, see whether anybody out in the,
If you're online and you want to talk, just raise your virtual hand.
Okay, okay, we don't have any questions along those lines. I'm presuming with respect to the condos, that if that easement is granted, it'll be well known to them. Do they have an association at this point, or is it just the building, the property owner at this point?
I'm the property owner. There's no one else besides myself, and we have discussed, and we're absolutely fine with that. We'll just put up a nice, brick wall there on one side and landscape it well. It'll look great.
Okay. In terms of process, it was pointed out, Tricia, in your review, that some of these changes represent deviations. Now, the way you set up the model motion, does that speak to that acknowledgement of deviation and the acceptance of the proposal?
Yep, I've noted the deviations in the conditions. So I've got it framed like, it is requested that the planning commission allow the alternate location of the parking lot in front of the building due to the overhead wires and the finding that is consistent with the neighboring properties to the north.
Okay.
I'd rather have that in the motion rather than as a condition.
Either way, I think that you're referencing, yeah. So that would work out if that's to the satisfaction of the commission. Anybody want to offer any other comments concerning the project?
Well, I'm always glad to see the owners come. We get these GDL corporations, I don't have the slightest idea who they are. Here we've got two of you here, and I mean, you own it, you're the boss, and that's what we want, And we appreciate. We had that the other day that the owner came in, and you're just as polished as some of the lawyers and stuff we see, so we appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Are we ready for a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Pat, do you want to go or?
No, I was just going to ask, how many employees are anticipated at this facility? Sorry to make you come back
No,
up.
okay. So as it stands right now, the stations, the hair stations or whatnot, there's 12 of those. So looking right now, as we ease into it, probably start out with 12 stylists, 1 manager, and then we'll, grow from there is the plan right now.
Super. Okay, I will make a motion for case 21-008 to approve the site plan for the 2,783 square foot building and related site improvements for the Benji Salon located at the future address of 319 Cummings Avenue Northwest, per plan set with a last revision date of 4/7/2021, subject to the following conditions. The developer shall address all the items outlined in the city engineer's report dated 4/16/2021. The plan shall be revised to reflect the specific nature of the uses permitted on the site, specifically related to brow waxing, not microblading, and massage use of only the following areas: scalp, face, neck, shoulders, prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall clarify any licensing requirements for the administration of injectable Botox. The applicant shall submit a recorded copy of each cross-access easement agreement, parking easement agreement, dumpster easement, and shared parking agreement prior to the issuance of a building permit. It is requested that the planning commission allow the alternate location of the parking lot in the front of the building due to overhead wires and finding that it is consistent with the neighboring properties to the north. It is requested that the planning commission allow the applicant to work with staff to submit an acceptable revised landscaping plan consistent with ordinance requirements prior to the issuance of a building permit. It is requested that the planning commission allow the applicant to work with staff to submit an acceptable revised photometric plan consistent with ordinance requirements prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall install decorative light posts along the frontage on Cummings, consistent with the design and spacing of light posts north of the site on Cummings Avenue prior to the issuance of building occupancy. The applicant shall revise the plan to include an foot sidewalk along the frontage of the site prior to the issuance of a building permit. The applicant shall work with the assessor to submit the necessary applications and supplemental documents for the land division from the parent parcel.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there support? Support by Joe. If there's no other questions, we'll ask for a roll call. Tricia, could you assist us on that?
Carrie?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Pat?
Yes.
Joel? Tyler?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Okay, motion carried.
Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Next order of business involves case number 21-012. This is a sign review. Address on Northridge Drive is Amazon directional signage. And Tricia, I'll turn this over to you.
Susan, we likely have someone in our audience named Kyle Schott, who is representing Amazon. There he is. Okay, bear with me a second here.
Kyle, you should be able to talk now.
Yes, Kyle Schott with Ryan Companies here. Thank you.
Hi, Kyle. Okay, so I'm going to be brief with this one. This is an easy one for once, coming from a golf course redevelopment. So Amazon is almost up and running. Their building is built, and they're working on trying to get some occupancy, and they've recently applied for some signage. And essentially, during the FASP process, that's when we like to approve any signs that are above and beyond what the ordinance allows. And so I think most of the focus during that FASP review was on the new Hendershot extension, the traffic generation from that site, and buffering on the northern property line. And so we didn't tackle the signage part. And so what Kyle is proposing for the directional signs is 30 square foot directional signs for both internal and the driveway access points. And the zoning ordinance, section 94-411, allows directional signs to be no larger than 4 square feet. And I think on this site, I think it's pretty clear that with this type of use, with the amount of vehicles going in and out of the site all day, that the 30 square feet is probably appropriate. And so they're just asking for 4 directional 30 square foot signs. So it's my recommendation that the Planning Commission grant the approval of the directional signs for the Amazon site at 3415 Northridge Drive as proposed.
How many signs was that?
4.
4.
In the packet, there's a graphic as far as where those be located on the property?
Yeah, and I can bring it up on my computer screen here if needed. Here it is. So on here, they're called pylon signs. Oh, what happened?
Planning Commission, may I speak a minute?
With regard to this project?
No. We thought that tonight there was going to be discussion on the school project on Richmond Court. I have a green notice that came in the mail. Are you guys going to discuss that tonight?
So that one is being pushed off to the May 5th agenda.
I was not told.
Sometimes we have to get the public hearing notices out a certain amount of time before the meeting.
Okay.
And sometimes after they get sent out, we end up having to bump them to another agenda for various reasons. So I apologize that,
I apologize for interrupting, but I could kind of tell it wasn't coming up. So I think we'll leave.
Okay,
Okay?
that's
all right.
fine.
we apologize.
Yeah. Can I voice my concern as a citizen though a minute about that project?
It would be best if you waited until it was on the agenda,
Okay.
because the planning commissioners haven't even seen that plan yet.
Okay, well, my concern is there's construction going on at that site at this time before they have any permits. Are you
So-
aware of that?
Yes, and thank you for noticing that. The people from Kennewick Hills Public Schools and their engineer are working with our engineering department to secure some soil erosion permits. And they're also working with the city of Grand Rapids on some utilities. And so schools are under the jurisdiction of the state, which I'm sure you may. So when they come to the planning commission, they have a courtesy site plan review. So the planning commission is allowed to provide comments and feedback on their plan, but they don't vote on it. And their building permit goes through the state instead of through the city.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit different with
You have
schools.
no say of that school system there.
We have say when it comes to health, safety and welfare. So, they work with our DPW to get highway permits, and they also work with our engineering department for stormwater permits and soil erosion permits.
Okay. Well, we'll leave then. So a new paper will come out in the mail? Or a new card?
Yes, you should get a
To
new one
notify us?
for May 5th. Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're
All right,
welcome.
thank you.
You still there, Kyle?
I am, thanks.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
So we have the proposed signs are located at the driveway entrances. And you've got one that's located here where Hendershot meets up with Northridge Drive. And then over here where trucks start moving into, or maybe they're moving out of this. I don't know if you want Kyle to explain this a little bit better. But staff is okay with the location and with the number.
Where's the fourth one?
So you've got 1, 2, 3, and then there's one up here.
Yeah, the one along, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, that's correct, Tricia. And again, the intention here is, given the various types of vehicles that are entering and exiting the site, those being trucks, delivery vans, and associate cars, we want to make sure that each of those vehicles is getting around the site safely and going to the right location. So we want to make sure that the sign is somewhat prominent, has the correct language on it to direct people safely.
I guess my question is, given the nature of the operation, as we were going over the initial plan, like you say, there's a lot of focus in on Hendershot getting in and the larger issues, and now we're looking at the signs. But I seem to recall that the predominant route that the large vehicles would take would be more likely beyond Northridge, coming into the site as well as leaving the site.
That's exactly right. So they'd be coming in on Northridge, entering onto Hendershot, at least the trucks would, entering there and getting to the building. The reason we have this road, the proposed ring road, that is a requirement of the for fire access and not for the trucks.
Okay, so the associates and visitors they have more flexibility to come in perhaps from the north, off from 4 Mile onto Hendershot.
Yep. Off of 4 Mile, that's how they would get into the associate car park at the front or the north end of the building. And then the delivery vans would be a combination of Northridge and possibly using Hendershot depending on their route. But I believe most of even the delivery van traffic will be using Northridge based on the traffic study.
Okay.
That's why the majority of the signage is along Northridge or closely there abouts, to make sure that the trucks do not go any further onto Hendershot, which was initially discussed. But we want to make sure that again, that signage is prominent, larger than 4 square feet in order to make sure that it is visible for each of the various vehicles going to the right place.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Does it have to be 10 feet tall? I see that it's lifted off the ground by 3 feet, and then seems like I can see the signage. You want to have, the words large enough so people can read them when they're coming in, but it seems like it's lifted up 3 feet in the air. Seems kind of tall, 10 feet.
Well, I think our concern there is you have truck drivers that are lifted up, as they're sitting in their vehicles, are up significantly higher onto off of the ground. So we want to make sure that they're not looking down or in front of their vehicle. And if those words are directly onto the ground, we fear that they would not be able to see the signage. This signage that's proposed is, it goes into 90% of the Amazon facilities that we develop for our tenant. There may be 1 or 2 instances. It's definitely the minority where there's changes here or there's concern. But generally the design is used specifically for visibility for not only the delivery vans or cars, but also the truck drivers as well.
Commissioners, any other comments, questions? We've got a recommendation from staff.
I do have a comment there. I think the sign is only 2 foot off the ground. And I think they're a vision problem for cars in the delivery vans. That's also, that's a big sign. And if I'm driving up there with a car, especially the one by the sidewalk, I can't see a pedestrian on the sidewalk till I'm on the sidewalk. That's just my comment.
Tricia, could you put the site plan up again, please? Correct, yes.
That sign right there that is shown on the screen, that is a different sign. That's the proposed monument sign
Okay.
at that corner. So I apologize. I believe there are only 3. And then these locations are specific to directing people at the appropriate time. So we felt that the location on the corner of Hendershot and Northridge was appropriate to make sure that the truckers or whoever it may be knows to take either keep going straight or take the turn. And then at the entrance into the truck yard, that's necessary to make sure that the trucks do not go any further along Hendershot. And then again, this is for the delivery vans up at this location to make sure that they're going in the right space. The other curb cut is exit only, so there's no sign needed there.
Tom, are you looking at it from a sight distance perspective?
I'm having trouble with the mute unmute here, but no, I mean, it's 2 foot off the ground and 84 inches high. I mean, and it's 7, if I did my math right, 7 feet wide. I think they need to be set back further. If they're gonna be that big, they need to be set back so somebody pulling up the sidewalk or at the corner isn't trying to have to look through this big, through this 30 square foot sign. That's, I don't think the ordinance allows them that to block vision like that, do they, Tricia?
The ordinance allows for them to be 5 feet from any property line. So, typically directional signs are at driveway entrances, and it doesn't specifically mention blocking vision, but that's definitely, I think, the purpose or the intent of the 5 foot setback. But that's why they're here at the Planning Commission, to get approval for this size of directional signs.
I don't have a problem with the size of the signs. I just think they need to be placed so somebody pulling up to the sidewalk or the corner doesn't have to look through it. I'll let staff determine whether they think there's an adequate location. I did go through one of their facilities this afternoon or drive by, and yeah, they're a decent sized sign. It's just a comment from me. If the rest of the commission and the board members are happy, I'm happy.
Well, Tom, I think you bring up a good point. In some cases, when you have an intersecting street like this, sometimes there's a sight triangle, maybe 25 foot back both directions, and especially we're allowing for a larger sign, and so I think it is reasonable to scrutinize it in that respect, so that pedestrians on the sidewalk and motorists, especially the large vehicles coming in and out of the site, that everybody sees each other. They're showing that it looks like a 12-foot setback on one side and 10 foot measured from the back of the sidewalk. And I think what it might suggest is having that move back a little bit further from there, so that to address that sight distance for motorists and pedestrians at the intersection. I'm not sure. I think perhaps leaving this to for Tricia and Scott to work with them to come up with a location that would address that concern is reasonable.
I would feel comfortable with that.
I will comment that where I saw their signs this afternoon at 44th Street there, the old Steelcase place, I don't think they can make the lettering big enough, because I was reading the signs and it's like, I need to stop here to make sure I'm getting the right direction. I'm sure the vans will all know where to go, but and the trucks will get used to it too, because if I remember correctly, these are dedicated trucks that go back and forth from the big building to this building. So like I said, I don't have a problem with the size of the signs, but we just need to be careful where we put them. So like somebody in a car, 3 foot 6 inches isn't trying to look through a sign to see somebody coming from the right or the left.
Kyle, you're online right now. Do you understand where we're coming from here?
Yeah, I do. And yeah, I appreciate the comment of working with staff, Scott and Tricia, to find the right location. Because as we know, when we look at these plans, the actual distance shown or the scale can kind of throw us off. And I'm not saying that's what's happening here, but I think it's appropriate to make sure that where we're placing these signs allows visibility for motorists. And we don't want to be productive here by putting large signs for what we see as a safety reason and have it cause an issue. So I think that's a fine way of going about it, is making sure with Scott and Tricia that we locate them properly. But if we can keep the size the same.
Okay. Are we in a good direction here and addressing it in that fashion?
Do we need a motion on this?
Yes.
I didn't see a sheet. Do we have one, Tricia? Well, do we just kind of wing it then?
Sure.
Yep, you get to wing it.
Great. Fun for everybody.
Tyler can wing it. He's good at it.
Let me just pull it up again quick. Okay, for case 21012, sign review at 3415 Northridge Drive Northwest. I would make a motion to approve the requested additional signage as a PUD benefit, subject to discussions between staff and the developer on locating the signs as discussed in the planning commission meeting. Is there anything else we need on that? So it'll be 3 directional signs at 30 square feet each, correct? All right.
All right, we have a motion. Is there support? Support by Joe. Tricia, please call the roll on that.
Terry,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Joe, Tyler,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Tom.
Yes.
Okay, motion carried. Kyle, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Kyle.
All right, we're at the end of the agenda. Any other business to talk about?
We will be having the Waterford Village folks on the city commission agenda on Monday, April 26th for the first reading of the rezone. At the last meeting on April 14th at the planning commission meeting, I heard public hearing. And so just wanted to reiterate that while the public is absolutely welcome at the meeting, it's not a public hearing that goes by the noticing requirements.
My apologies.
Oh, that's okay. It caused some confusion for me at first, and but we're all set now. Yep, and then like these gentlemen were asking about earlier, we have a courtesy site plan review that's coming up on May 5th. And we also have the speed rack FASP, which is part of the Northridge East Phase 2 for the final area site plan. You just recently approved the amendment to the PUD. And we have a small accessory building that's being proposed in an office, research and parking zoning district. And that's all for right now. Yeah, they've been, there's a group that's interested in developing that site as a car wash. We've looked at a couple of different versions of the site plan, but it's really hard to get around the vacuum noise and how they would buffer or muffle that with landscaping or fencing. So it's a special exception use, so they may pursue it, they may not. They haven't submitted an application yet.
If you don't turn your speakers on, some of us can't hear.
Yeah, Pat.
Sorry, Tom.
Thank you.
I was just saying, we just have a car wash just, a block away that, I mean, it's grandfathered in, I guess, but
Yeah, I think the car wash was there first and then the residential. If you're talking about the one that's next to Taco Bell. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Any other business?
If there's nothing else, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Support.
Oh,
Motion and support to adjourn. All those in favor, voice vote. Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
and I am laying down in case you haven't figured that out. My back is